All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here tonight. We're in Genesis chapter 11, verse number 10. Genesis 11, verse 10. We have, last week, the first half of Genesis 11 dealt with all the information regarding the Tower of Babel, and then once that is done, it opens up to another genealogy, which is one of the last ones you'll get, at least for a while. But the purpose of it is to walk you basically from the flood to Abram, who will be the focus of the next many chapters in Genesis. It begins in verse 10 of chapter 11. These are the generations of Shem, that's the son of Noah. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. We're gonna have a lot of names here, and we're not gonna have a lot of information. That's just how it is. Again, the point, as I've said now, I think probably 3 times when we have these genealogies, the point is not to not for Moses the author to give you a biography of each one of these individuals, but rather just to say there is a lineage, there is a traceable path from this patriarch to that patriarch, from Noah and his son Shem to, as we'll see in just a second, Abram, the man who will become Abraham, the ultimate patriarch of all faithful people. So it's more about just the means to the end. Verse 11, and Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years, and he begat sons and daughters. This all sounds very familiar to chapter 5, when we had that happen a lot. But if you remember in chapter 5, the number of years that people lived was 900-something years. Occasionally you might have a late 800s, but usually it's 900 years. Here, 500 years begat sons and daughters, and Arphaxad lived, verse 12, 530 years, and begat Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Salah 403 years, and he begat sons and daughters. So he's living 403 years, over which time he has many more sons and daughters. He finally dies at the age of 438. About half, if not a little worse than half, what everybody else was living before that, in the prior flood. Verse 14, and Salah lived 30 years and begat Eber. Eber, who we talked about last week, if you pronounce it with the E as an H sound, Heber. This is where the Hebrew culture, the Hebrew race gets its name. He begat Eber, verse 15, and Salah lived after he begat Eber 403 years and begat sons and daughters. In all, he's going to live 433 years or so before dying. There he is, verse 16. He lived 430 years and then begat Eber, lived 430 years and then begat Peleg. And Eber lived after he begat Peleg 430 years and begat sons and daughters. Verse 18, and Peleg lived, I don't have much to offer, and Peleg lived 30 years and begat Reu. I do want you to note, though, one thing you're seeing here is the people who are siring their kids, these patriarchs, they're having their babies in perfectly normal times. Like, even like in the post or pre-flood genealogy of chapter 5, men, as soon as they are able to sire kids, are having children. They're having sons and daughters, and they're just living a very long time to have a lot of babies. Here, they're still starting around the same age people, relatively speaking, nowadays start, but dying a lot earlier. Not as early as we are yet, but a lot earlier than they were in chapter 5. So anyway, verse 18, 30 years he begets Reu. And Peleg, verse 19, lives after he begat Reu 209 years and begets sons and daughters. So he lives about 239 and dies. And Reu was 32 years and begat Serug. And Reu lived after he begat Serug 207 years and begat sons and daughters. So about 239 before he croaks. And Serug lived 30 years and begat Nahor. And Serug lived after he begat Nahor 200 years and begat sons and daughters. You only get the one name. Everybody else is just, a footnote. You get the one name because that's the next patriarch after that guy, tracing a lineage to, as we'll see, Abram. So 230, and then he dies. We are now a quarter or to a third, fewer years than what you had prior to the flood. Verse 24. And Nahor lived 29 years, 29 years old, and he begat Terah. And Nahor lived after he begat Terah 119 years and begat sons and daughters. So 119, he's dying at the age of 148. And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So here's a 70-year-old guy who's having kids. We'll see that again when we get to Abram and how old he is when God starts making promises to him. But he lives 70 years before he begets Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran probably is the eldest, but he's not mentioned first because Abram is mentioned first. Abram is mentioned first because he's Abram. He's Abraham. So he gets top billing. But Haran's probably the eldest for reasons we'll find out as the book unfolds. Verse 27. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. That makes Lot Abram's nephew. A fact which will come into play later on in this book. 28. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, in Ur of the Chaldees. That title probably is familiar to you. This is where Abram will leave, from which he'll leave to go to the promised land. And in what will ultimately, many years from now, be a great twist of historical irony. This native land of the patriarch Abram, through whom will come Isaac and Jacob and Israel and the tribes thereof. Those Israelite tribes, when they rebel against God perpetually, many times, and finally God smacks them down for once and for good through the use of Babylon, Babylon will come in and carry them away to their homeland, which is Chaldea, Babylonia, the native homeland of Abram. And it's just this, it's not just some poetry, it's not just this irony, it's also a thing that God does throughout the Bible is he tends to want to just wipe the slate clean and start over at times. Not entirely, not fundamentally, totally building a whole new planet, although he will threaten that later when we get to Moses, but it's more like just like in the flood. I'm just going to wipe it clean and start over through Noah. Or you have it with Joseph, you'll see it there. You'll have it with Israel, the nation, you'll see it there. You have it with Abram, you'll see it here in just a little bit. You've got this whole sense of I'm going to take you for myself and I'm going to start something fresh. And so everything is going to leave all of this behind and start something new. Israel's going to sin, and so we're going to reset with Israel. This is much later. This is like King Zedekiah kind of era. We're going to just leave all this behind. We're going to do away with all this stuff. And we're going to go into Babylon. And you're going to spend several decades there, and then you're going to come out of there, and you're going to be done with all your idolatry stuff that they were doing. And this is like Chronicles and late Isaiah kind of stuff. And it's just, it's poetic justice. You're going to go back to the place where your ancestor Abram came out of. But he came out of there to be the father of my people. But because you stopped being my people, you're going to go back there, back to the place before you were my people. So you can come out of there to be my people again. You see the poetry there? I just love the way God does that. Anyway, Haran dies before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, Ur of the Chaldees. Verse 29. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. She will later be Sarah. And I promise you, before this class is over, I'll call her that before God does. And the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, the daughter of Ishka. So, this last name that is given there in verse 29, my Bible has it Ishka or Iska, yours might say. You can find rabbinic scholars that say this is another name for Sarah, or it's a daughter whose part in history is not important. Either way, here is your lineage, and we have now accomplished the purpose, which is to get us from Noah and Shem down to the descendant of Shem, the Shemitic people, the Semitic people, down to Abraham. Quick little footnote that will become important later in Genesis, verse 30. Sarai was barren. She had no child. Not just she didn't have a child yet, she was barren, and though by all natural processes was not going to be able to have a child. But with God all things are possible. Verse 31. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there. So, you're looking at it on the map, all right, which I will then draw in perfect specificity as I always do. Da, 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 da. And then you've got all right. So here is, Greece and all that's there. So Africa, Nile, the little Horn of Africa, somewhere that's like the Persian Gulf. This is not to scale. It should be more like that. And then you've got the oh wait, this is all kinds of wrong. You know what? It doesn't matter because this is the part that's relevant. All right. Persian Gulf, Tigris and Euphrates, Canaan's land. Right. We can all recognize that. I would hope it's not that too terrible of a job. Mediterranean Sea. Promised Land, Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea. Although, whether it's dead or not yet, that's a matter of debate. Because Sodom and Gomorrah haven't been nuked from orbit yet. So, Tigris and Euphrates are here. About here, Ur of the Chaldees. Chaldea, Babylonia, future, Babylon. Chaldea, this is where Abram is and his family. They have been told already, we read it in verse 31. Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran's son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, and his son Abram's wife. And they went from Ur of the Chaldees to go to the land of Canaan, but came to Haran, which is in Padan Aram, way up here. So they go there, they just stop. And this is obviously, this is not to scale. You can follow on your map, it's not exactly. But it's basically the top of the Fertile Crescent. They're following the Fertile Crescent, which should be more wide, but I'm working with what I got. They're following the Fertile Crescent, and eventually they're going to make their way into Canaan's land, and then go into Egypt, but we're not there yet. So they're about here. They stop here. Now, if we're reading Genesis straight through, and like if we don't know anything about the history of anything, we're just reading Genesis page 1, verse 1, and we're starting to see what all the fuss is about. And we get here, which is page 42 in my Bible. you're wondering what's the big deal, what's going on. It seems like it's a big non-starter, it's a nothing burger. We're just following this people who are just making this journey and they go to here. But you got to remember that Moses, the author, is writing to a people who have some general understanding of their history through oral tradition and oral recitation. They don't have it written down yet, but they know creation, they know the flood, they know Tower of Babel probably. They certainly know the gist of the deeds of their father Abraham. It just hasn't been written down yet. So they have some familiarity with the story, so to speak. It's not a story, it's an account. They know Abram was from Chaldea. They know he settles. He's a nomad in the promised land, goes to Egypt, comes back out, does a lot of stuff. And whether or not they knew this or not, Moses is going to tell them, before he makes it to Canaan's land, he and his family stop up here in Haran. To us, if we're just reading it from the beginning, it means nothing to us. To an Israelite, who doesn't know, they might wonder, well, didn't God tell him to go to here? Yes, indeed, he does tell him to go to here. So what's he doing up there? I don't know. Let's keep reading. Because when you open, verse 32, let's finish the chapter. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Okay, so you've got, here is where Abram is. He's up in Padan Aram. He's just sitting up there. And he's with his family. Now, we're going to open chapter 12. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get thee out of your country, from your kindred, and from your father's house, and go to the land I will show you. And he's going to tell him all the blessings that come with that. So you have in chapter 12, God having told Abram to go to the land I will show him. He doesn't tell him to go to Canaan's land. He doesn't tell him to go to the Mediterranean Sea. He tells him, go and I'll tell you when to stop. Okay? God has not told him to stop, but Abram has stopped. And Abram has gone with his father's house, which God told him not to do. So he's done all that. He waits until his dad dies. And then, once his dad dies up here, then God tells him again, didn't I tell you to go down here? Why do I phrase it that way? Because when you open chapter 12, it's the Lord had said. Now, God had told Abram. Abram is up here. He was here. He's supposed to be here. He doesn't know that yet, but go with it. But God had said, go here. We know. So the Lord had said to leave your kindred, to leave your father's house, and go to the land I will show you. And I didn't show you Padan Aram. But that's what Abram has done. And so he's here until God says, hey, get on the road. And so he does. The Lord had said to do all that. Verse 12, and if you do, God had told him, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. So God's commands, as a universal principle, require faithful obedience. No one has ever been blessed by God in obedience to a command that they did with their arm tied behind or with their arm twisted, right? With a begrudged attitude. No one ever accidentally stumbled into faithful obedience. It requires the deliberate action of the person in question. In this case, Abram. But he is the template for all of us, according to Romans 4. So you've got this guy who has been told by God to do something. God didn't tell him to build an ark. God didn't tell him to conquer a city. God didn't tell him to repent and be baptized. God just told him, move. Pack it up and move. And so if you do, eventually, being faithfully obedient, you will receive the blessing that comes with obedience to the command I gave you. In this case, I'm going to make of you a family, a nation. I'm going to make you this guy who has never had a child before, who is already 75 years old, who has a wife who's 65, and who's never had a kid, in fact, can't have a child. I'm going to make from you a great nation. Now, already we've seen that happen. We have seen God do that. Post-flood, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. You follow their genealogy. Hey, that's why that's there. You follow their lineage as they go to all their different places, and you see that they have all their babies, and they spawn this nation over here, and they have their babies. They spawn this kingdom, or the eventual will be this kingdom over here and over there. And Moses walks you through post-flood how all the populations of the earth start sprouting because people just got together and had a bunch of babies. So the idea that God would tell this guy, if you do this, I'll make a nation out of you, we've seen that. But it's this guy who, by all natural means, should not be able to have one child, much less a whole nation of them, that's going to make it something special. That's only part of the equation. The other part is, I'm going to make a special relationship with you, Abram, so that anyone who is on your side will be on my side. And anyone who sets their eyes against you will also be setting their eyes against me. And they will look at you and they'll just see some old man. But behind you will be the army of God and the power of the majesty of heaven. And so anyone who blesses you, I will bless. And anyone who curses you, I will curse. And I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. Verse 3. I'll bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So with Abram, you have a twofold promise here. In the immediacy, And by immediate, I mean 1,000+ years, but you have from his loins coming this physical nation that we will call the nation of Israel. But in the grander scheme of things, all the families of the earth will be blessed. It's not just through you will come a nation that I will bless, but through you will come someone through whom all nations will be blessed, and all families will be blessed, and all peoples will be blessed. And that's the second messianic prophecy of the Bible. The first being Genesis 3:15. Many more will come after this. So the significant thing here, you have to remember the life expectancy. We've already seen this in chapter 11. The life expectancy has fallen dramatically. We've gone from pushing the millennia of life to you're lucky if you hit 200. And Abraham's going to be 175 when he dies. Right now he's 75. And God says, you're just getting started. And it's hard for us to fathom, but Abraham goes and does what he's told. Verse 5. So Abram took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gathered in Haran, and they went forth into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. Now, as we say, God has been very explicit here. Go to the land that I will show you. So at some point along this journey, God is guiding Abram's path. God is telling him where to go. And I think you can see, even though that's not given to us, you can see the precedent for that later in Genesis, as you see Moses repeatedly stopping. Just about every time he makes camp, he builds an altar, calls upon the name of the Lord. And it doesn't say exactly what goes on in that, other than the offering of the animal, but probably soliciting guidance, asking, what path do I take? Where do I go? What do I do? And that probably is happening all along this journey and all along down into this land. That when he started, he had no idea where he was going. It looks very close here because this is not to scale. It's a big journey. And he's following this whole path that God has laid out for him, not knowing where he's going. That's what Hebrews says, that he just goes not knowing where he's going. He just trusts that God will get him there. He goes, that's obedience. He goes not knowing where he's going. That's faithful obedience. And because of that, he's blessed. That's Romans chapter 4. What happens on their journey? Because what you got in verse 5 is they go toward the land of Canaan and they come into the land of Canaan. Well, I mean, Moses, a lot happens, I'm sure, in the middle of that, but he doesn't tell us. It's not relevant. It could have been a very boring trip, like a trip to Jonesboro, or it could have been like the Oregon Trail, and all kinds of things happened. People got sick and got better, and all kinds of things. They were shooting buffaloes with BBs and all kinds of stuff that happens on the Oregon Trail. We're not told. It's not relevant. That's not the history he's recording. Verse 6. And Abram passed through the land into the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. I would remind you, even though I made a big deal about leave your kindred, that we've already seen, somewhere up here is Noah's Ark, and Shem, Ham, and Japheth have all, spread about, and Ham's descendants have settled in this land. Well, Ham is, the relative of Noah, of Abram, by several generations. We're 10 generations from Noah to Abram. But still they're related. So in some sense, you have kindred here. You have kinsmen here, but not of his particular bloodline. So they don't count. So he's going into this land. He's going into the land of Canaan and the Canaanites who are in that land. This particular place that's mentioned in verse 6, the plain of Moreh, maybe possibly the same place that his grandson will visit in chapter 35:4, when he says, bury your idols under this oak tree here and let's worship the Lord only. Maybe the same place. There's some debate about that. But you're going to see for the next several chapters several significant landmarks that will be continually revisited throughout Genesis and Israelite history. Verse 7. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, unto your seed will I give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord, who appeared unto him. When did God appear to him? Stephen, when he preaches his sermon that will take his life in Acts 7, verses 2-4, he makes it clear that God appeared to Abram and told him to go. So like here, God appears to him. But that doesn't discount the possibility that there were other times when God appeared to him. Maybe you have in your mind, when you think of the call of Abraham to get up and leave, you think of a voice. And most certainly there are times when God spoke to the patriarchs with just a voice. But there are also times, and there is one that will be explicitly given prior to the destruction of Sodom, when God will speak to Abram in some form that Abram can behold and witness. So it is not out of the character of God, out of the ordinary for the Lord to appear. Not to be heard, but to be seen and heard. In some form in which he chooses to take, whatever that may be. Some pre-incarnate Christ form, perhaps. That's just one of my theories, and many others I'm sure as well. So he appeared unto him. He said, go and I'll give this land to your seed. And so he builds an altar. Get used to that. You're going to see that a lot. for the next several chapters. This is how they worshipped. This is what they did. They slaughtered an animal. They didn't go find an animal. They had animals. They killed their best animal and offered it up to the Lord, who can't eat. But you burn it up anyway to give it to Him. Same reason you put money in the plate. God does not have a checking account. But you burn it up to Him because that is an offering. So that's called offering. Verse 8. And then Abram removed from there unto a mountain on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent. That's another phrase you'll see a lot. That's where he nomadically rests for a little while. Having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. Hai will be the future site of the city of Ai, where Joshua will get and the nation will get their butt kicked when they have sin in the land after the Battle of Jericho. So Hai is on the east and Bethel's on the west. And he builds an altar to the Lord there again and calls upon the name of the Lord. We haven't heard that phrase in a while since we're seeing it here. It was first referenced by Seth. Seth and his descendants call upon the name of the Lord. The implication being the descendants of Cain, and those people are not doing that. But to call upon the name of the Lord, to appeal to God as sole God, as the only God you're going to listen to and follow, as opposed to... There's no record just yet of idolatry. In fact, the first reference to actual idolatry doesn't come until like chapter 31 of this book. It doesn't mean there weren't also possibly idol worshiping going on in other places, starting to pop up. You just don't have record of that. You have other kinds of sins, but not that in particular. But to call upon the name of the Lord is to acknowledge God as your sovereign, to acknowledge God as your guide. Very relevant when you're nomadic people and you're going wherever you feel God wants you to go. So you're worshiping Him, you're soliciting Him for counsel, you're worshiping Him with an animal offering. Verse 9. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward thee. My Bible says south at the end of verse 9. Does everybody's Bible say south? Negev? Yeah, that's the more technical term for it. Because you're going to get that later, and it's going to be irrespective of location. It's going to be always like later he's going to be in Egypt, and he's going to leave Egypt and go to the south. So you think, Ethiopia? No, he's going to go to the south. It's south of Israel's territory, or south of Canaan's land, south of the Promised Land, the Negev, which I think the word just means south, but it's a specific location, the dry lands area. So he's going and heading down out of Canaan's land in toward the south. And while he's around that area, verse 10, there's a famine that comes to the land. And so Abram goes from there down into Egypt to sojourn there, because the famine was grievous in the land. You will see this again. This is a historical pattern that repeats itself. A famine sweeps across the land. Egypt is available. It's a place that is almost insulated from all kinds of stuff like that because they have the Nile Delta. And so they're very fertile. It's this desert and death and decay all around them, but you've got the Nile Delta. You can avoid the crocodiles. Everything else is peachy. And the slavery is the problem. But other than that, everything there is wonderful. And things grow plenteously and prosperously. And everything's great. So if you're here and you're struggling, and if you're a nomadic people, as Abraham and his clan is right now, you pack up your tents and you keep on going to wherever there is land. Which, by the way, is why, and this won't be a thing until you get to late Genesis, like Joseph in Genesis, why the people of Abraham are looked down upon by the Egyptians for different reasons, but one is particularly shepherding people, nomadic shepherding people were usually seen as scum. They were usually not great neighbors because they didn't have any kind of a claim to a land, and so they didn't feel any sense of ownership over the land, which is ironic because this whole thing was given to them by God. But like generally speaking, a shepherding nomadic people, they have their animals, they just let them roam free and eat all the food in my land and all my territory, and they just kind of plop it there, and their animals start plopping there, and it's just messy and nasty. And they're offering all their animal sacrifices, and it just smells all the time. So they get a bad reputation. But that's what you do. You're nomads. You have to keep traveling because everywhere you go, it's not your home. They're pilgrims. So they make their way into Egypt. And oh, what a show. Here we go into Egypt. Verse 11. It came to pass when he was come near to Egypt, let's read the next two verses together, that he said to Sarah his wife, Behold, I know you are a fair woman to look upon. Oh, verse 12. Therefore it shall come to pass when the Egyptians see you, they're going to say, that's his wife, and then they're going to kill me. And they will save you alive. So, yeah, she's a fair-looking woman. I'll take Abraham's word for it. She's also 65, so, good for her. But his point is not just to say that. He's not just flattering her for the sake of flattering her. He is thinking about his own self, and he's saying, if we go down in there, they're going to take one look at you, and then they're going to look at me, and they're going to look at you, and they're going to look at me, and they're going to say, well, let's just kill him and keep her. So, he has a solution. Here's Abram's character flaw. The great father of faith has a blind spot. and it's something he will struggle with for quite a while in his life. Abraham's big problem is he kept trying to solve God's problems for him, not appreciating the fact that God doesn't have problems. He kept seeing what's right in front of him, and he thought, well, okay, God, here's a problem. You promised through me and Sarah that there will come this great nation. We haven't had child one yet, but, we trust that'll happen. But it's not going to happen if I'm dead. So you've got a problem, God. What am I going to do to solve your problem for you? Instead of saying, God, what are you going to do? Or just being quiet and letting God do it, which is obviously the best case scenario. He's on the far side of that. He's on the worst case. And he says, I will solve your problem for you. This will happen multiple times in his life, up to and including Abraham, offer your son Isaac. He won't change anything, but you'll still see the thought process in his mind, because he'll think to himself, well, if I kill Isaac, then how are you going to produce the nation through my seed, which is Isaac? He's still thinking of, this is a problem, how's God going to fix it? But you see the growth there. By the time you get to chapter 22, he has already grown so much, he's not trying to solve the problem. He's still stewing with how God's going to solve it. Not appreciating that there is no need for it because there's not a problem, but there's growth. Here, no growth. Here, we're starting at square one. And he thinks, got a problem, got to fix it. Verse 13, here's what we're going to do. You're going to say that you're my sister, so that everything will be okay for both of us. And my soul will live because of you. Well, why is that? How would that work? His thought process, and it's sound. It's not going to work out the way he thinks, but it makes sense, is if they know we're married, and they're going to see how beautiful you are, the king, Pharaoh, is going to want you for his harem. Hold it. I know it's a thing. It's terrible, but that's just the culture. They're going to want you for his harem. Well, I am legally your owner. Again, sorry, culture. I'm yours. So in order to get around that little problem, they're just going to kill me. It's no big deal. They'll just kill me because it's the government. What are you going to do? Not vote? So they're going to kill me, and then they're going to take you into the harem. So if they find out we're not married, if they just hear that you're just my sister, then there's no need to kill me because there's no ownership there. It's just you, and then you're on your own. Sorry, honey, I'll come back for you later. But at least I'll be alive. That's Abraham's thought process. This is the father of faith. This is his thought process. So what you'll hear sometimes is people say, yes, but isn't Sarah Abraham's half-sister? And according to chapter 20, verse 12, she is. So doesn't that technicality, doesn't that mean he's not lying? Because I'm here to tell you, this is a lie. When he's walking into Egypt, he is walking in with a lie in his back pocket. He's ready to whip it out and say, hey, that's just my sister. No threats here. That's a lie. His purpose for saying what he's saying is to be deceptive, is to conceal the truth. That's a lie. If you're trying to argue for the technicality of it, take a look in the mirror. What else are you trying to get away with? And what else are you trying to lie about? But I don't want evil surmise about you, because that's what Abraham's doing right here. My dear friend Philip Van Winkle, who is now passed away from cancer, his father, Leslie Van Winkle, both were very fond of saying, because he got into an argument with one of our teachers in preaching school over this, because the teacher was taking the position that Abraham had lied. And he pointed out, I think rightly so, he told a half-truth, which is a half a lie, and a half a lie is a whole wrong. So that's what Abraham does here. He tells half a truth to conceal something. And to say something with concealing and deception in mind is itself the sin here. Either way, Abraham is now sin-washed. It's all ancient history, no pun intended. But here he is. Let's proceed from the assumption he's doing wrong, which I think the text bears out. Tell him you're my sister, so nothing bad will happen to me. Verse 14. And it came to pass that while Abram was coming to Egypt, the Egyptians, sure enough, behold the woman, and she is very fair. Now you might think, again, great, that's good for you, Sarah, to do that well. But I was reading Colin Delitzsch, who is like the gold standard of Old Testament commentaries. And they were arguing that Egyptian women are pretty plain, if not ugly. And so to see someone like Sarah, who might have just been like an 8, would have been like it's an Egyptian 10, is what I'm saying. Like you're a Canaanite 8, but you're an Egyptian 10. That was their working theory. But they're German, so I don't know what they know about any of that. Verse 15. Hey, shush now. Serious business. The princess also of Pharaoh saw her, and they commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. She doesn't even have a name anymore. She has no agency at all, and this is just the social mores of the day. But the princess of Pharaoh saw her, they talked her up to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was like, yeah, add her to the harem. It's just like logging on to Amazon and buying, shoes. So add her to the pile. So off she goes. Now she's part of Pharaoh's household. By the way, this part doesn't get resolved, and I will ask Moses this one day, you can rest assured, which is, or Abram, I guess I go straight to the horse's mouth, which is, what was your goal here to get Sarah back? Like, you're going to tell her all this, and she's going to go off, and she's going to be part of Pharaoh's harem, and then you're alive, but you don't have a wife right now. So what was that? I don't know what he was planning. I don't know what he was thinking. Probably he wasn't, as often happens with us. Verse 16. He entreated Abram, Pharaoh did, well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen and mules and men servants and maid servants and she mules and camels. In other words, here is your payment for this sister of yours. I want her for my harem. Here's what I'll pay you. And sheep and mules and servants, male and female donkeys and camels, worth their weight in gold, worth more than gold in this era. Because if you have an animal, what's gold? All you can do is just trade with it. But an animal that is multifaceted, multi-purposed, especially donkeys and oxen, things for pack animals. So he's paying a heavy price for Sarah. And he gets her, verse 17, and the Lord plagues Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah being Abram's wife. Hold on, because that's going to happen again. This is not the last time the Pharaoh of Egypt is going to have to deal with God and his plagues. But here it is happening for the first time at least. So he's taken her. He's none the wiser. He has been deceived by what we would call a half a truth, if you want to be, that hearted about it, that kind of hard about it. A half a truth has led to this deception. Now he's taken this woman as his concubine or wife or harem member. And now God is plaguing him. So Pharaoh calls Abram, verse 18. And says, what is it you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? And to finish that thought, verse 19, why did you just say she's my sister? So that I might have taken her as a wife. Now therefore, behold, take your wife away and get out of here. You see, Pharaoh calls Abram out on his half-truth. Because he recognized, you deceived me. Again, verse 18. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? You omitted a fact. That is a lie. Verse 19. Why didn't you say, she's my sister? A secondary sin on Abram's part, is he failed to give the benefit of the doubt. He evil surmised. He assumed evil on the part of his Egyptian host. For all, what he should have assumed is, God's hand would be over him and God would be protecting. He should have remembered the blessing. I'll bless whoever blesses you and curse whoever curses you. So yes, even if it gets hairy, God is going to be there. And it happens. He starts cursing Pharaoh with plagues. But he should have known that going in, literally into Egypt. And he should have thought, we're not going to lie, we're going to tell it as it is, and God's going to work it out. He doesn't trust. He assumes they are bad. He assumes they have bad intentions. And, this mess happens. And so, Pharaoh says, verse 20, he commands his men concerning Abram, and they send him away and his wife and all that he had, which I take to mean, for a few different reasons, that he gets to keep all the stuff that he got for Sarah, which is a sweet deal for him, because they paid him all this stuff to take her, and then suddenly God starts throwing plagues at him, and he's like, here, take her and go. Well, do you want the stuff? No, just go. And why would he do that? First of all, why do I think that? Is because when you get to the next chapter, you find Abraham suddenly has a lot of gold, a lot more animals, a lot more servants that he did not have when he was going into Egypt. So presumably, Pharaoh's just given this stuff to get him out of here, which I would think is a peace offering. I'm so sorry. I took your wife. And I've been smited by the Lord, so get out of here. And I don't want to see you again. I'm sure he was very happy to see the Hebrew leave his land. I'm sure he was saying, I'm glad I don't have to deal with them and their God anymore. Foreshadowing. We're not there yet. Right now we're in chapter 13 of Genesis. So Abram gets up and goes out of Egypt. He and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him. Where did he come from? He was either there or he was just waiting at the gate to see, when he was coming back. But probably he was just around and just part of the clan of Abram. And so there he is again. And they go into the south. Not the south, but the south, into the Negev. 13:2. Now Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. Where did he get that? A whole thing that happened previously, we shall not mention. Verse 3. And so he goes on his journeys from the south, even to Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, even Bethel and Hai. So he's back to kind of where he started. Presumably the famine has passed. And he goes to the place of the altar, verse 4, which he had made there at the first. That's the last time he was there. And there Abram called in the name of the Lord. There's that recurring motif that you see in the book. He goes, in this offering that he makes here might have been to make amends for what he did back here. But either way, it's, you've gotten me out. Thanks for all of that. Verse 5. And Lot also, who was with Abram, he also had flocks and herds and tents. These are nomadic people. This is what you have to survive. This is not a family vacation. If you get that in your head, you have to remember you are dealing with hundreds of servants of male and female kinds who are doing different tasks. You have all these animals. You have all of these pack animals carrying all your stuff. You got all your equipment. Then when you finally settle somewhere, then you have to set up your tents and things that can constitute a whole lot of mini nation, like a little town is moving around an area. You're a big group of people. This is a nomadic troop. Verse 6, and so the land is not able to bear them being Abram and all his things, and Lot and all his things, which probably are smaller, but still sizable enough that this town ain't big enough for the both of us, kind of thing. They can't dwell together anymore. Their substance is too great, and they can't dwell together. Verse 7. And so there comes this strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. Not between Lot and Abram, but just between the servants who are working for their respective, masters. They're arguing work-related stuff, probably because you have a particular... Oh, let's see what this is going to give me. Hey, look at that. You've got a particular plot of land, and it's not this big. I don't know why I even bothered with that. You've got this plot of land, it's probably not even that big. And you've got Abram has got his share, and Lot's got his share. Well, sheep got to graze, and they're going to start grazing, and sheep are dumb. And they're going to cross that borderline, which is imaginary, and they're going to start eating over there. And Lot's herdsmen are going to see Abram's herdsmen coming over into my half of the land that we've currently claimed as nomads. And so, something's going to go down. They start strifing. And that's at the same time, nearby are Canaanites and Perizzites dwelling in the land. You can imagine who these people who don't have, a dog in the fight. Is that the phrase? A dog in the hunt? Yeah, not dog in the fight. That's cruelty. A dog in the hunt. They don't have skin in this game. I almost made a joke, but I'm not going to make it. They don't have skin in this game. And so they are looking at this giant nomadic clan that is starting to, fight each other. They're thinking, hey, we can pick off what's left. We can take a little, take a little, take a little. Take advantage of this fighting. You can see how this is a precarious situation. Verse 8. So Abram says to Lot, let there be no strife, I pray, between me and you, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we be brethren. This is the mantra of all who seek peace between family members, between community members, between the children of God. We are brethren. Let us not find a reason to fight. Let's find a reason to coexist. Let's find a way to make this work where we don't walk away with black eyes, but with good relations. Verse 9. Abram continues, is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself, I pray you, from me. If you take the left hand, then I'll go to the right. If you depart to the right hand, then I'll go to the left. Again, remember, Abram is the uncle. He's the elder. He's the patriarch. Lot is the nephew. He's the younger. He's the subordinate to the patriarch. And yet Abraham does this charitable thing. He says to go out of my way to make sure there's no hostility. You choose where you want to go, and I will just go where you don't go. So you can pick the cream of the crop. You can pick the best plot of land that you can find. If you go right, I'll go left. If you think left is great, I'll go right. You pick first, and I'll go after. So verse 10, Lot lifts up his eyes, and he beholds all the plain of Jordan. And there was a well-watered place there. It was very well-watered, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like unto the land of Egypt, as you come unto Zoar. So Lot is looking at this whole region over here, and he's saying just how fertile it is, how beautiful it is. And Moses in his commentary says it's like Eden, the paradise garden all over again. It's like the Nile Delta. It's so lush and rich with life and abundance. And Lot says, I get to pick what I want. I want the best. And I think we're allowed to scold Lot here, because a favor was done to him, and he just took it. When someone offers you a platter of chocolate chip cookies, do not pick the best chocolate chip cookie. When someone says, sit wherever you like, do not sit the best seat in the house. Have some humility. Have some shame about you. Don't be obscene to think, well, I'm going to pick the best seat to be seen by everybody, or I'm going to pick the thing that gives me the most out of all of this situation. Have some shame. Have some humility. If someone offers you your first pick, middle to last. And then let the Lord work everything else out for your benefit. That is a Bible principle that runs into the New Testament. But here Lot just sees a golden opportunity to take. And so he does. He spies out this land he spies out the land before, which is held by Sodom and Gomorrah, before Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed. Lot doesn't know that. Moses is writing it after the fact. And he's telling his readers, you see what his greed is going to get him. Verse 11. Then Lot chose all that plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from the other, Abram and Lot. Verse 12. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. So Abram ends up heading back into Canaan's land. Mind you, God has not specifically said, here is the territory which will be your native or your ancestral claim, your descendant claim, whatever that term will be. He's not told him that yet. You're going to get that in a second. He just has separated from Lot, and he has found his way here. You can attribute that to providence. and to God just steering the hands of fate, if you will. That's a poor phraseology, but putting the pieces in place where he would have them be to accomplish his will through natural means. So here, Lot goes there. Abram's going to go here. Verse 12 again. Abram dwells in Canaan, Lot in the cities on the plain, and he pitches his tent toward, he starts nomadically moving toward, closer to the city known as Sodom. We're still many chapters away, and yet we get a teaser, verse 13. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Again, as I said a minute ago, you don't have any reference yet. You're still 19 or 18 chapters away from a specific reference to idolatry. But you had in Genesis 6, the whole state of the world was wicked and evil continually in their thoughts. Whether that included worshiping a tree over the maker of the tree, Moses doesn't say. Certainly it was abundant in the time of Moses. I mean, he writes Genesis in the aftermath of the golden calf, for crying out loud. If he wasn't to mention it, that'd be a golden chance to mention it. No pun intended, golden opportunity to mention it. He doesn't mention it here either. He just says they're wicked and they're sinners. What wickedness and sin they commit, you find out later. But it's not idolatry. It's something else. But it's not idolatry. Whatever it is, you have patriarchs in that land. You have people in that land who should have been hearing the word of God, who should have been knowing the will of God, but have shut their eyes and shut their ears to the Lord, and were doing their own thing. Verse 14. So, Abram, we leave Lot. Abram is heading north into Canaan's land. And God says to Canaan, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are northward and southward and eastward and westward. Here you are. Looky, 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 looky. Look all the way around you. You've got a river here. You've got a sea here. You've got beautiful hills and mountains there. You've got a valley down here. Look all the way around you. Everything that you see. Verse 15. For all the land which you see, to you will I give, and to your seed forever. Here, finally, he knows where he has been going. Up to here, up to this point, it's just been go to the land that I will show you. And even while he passed through here to get into Egypt, God never said, hey, this is going to be it. Until later he comes in and God says, hey, take a look around. This is your land. And this is the land that your descendants will occupy. At this time right now, it's the descendants of Ham. It's the Canaanite people and the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites and all those people. And the Jebusites, they're occupying the land, or they will. Some of them will eventually occupy it. But it doesn't matter. I have said it's yours. In my timetable, in my way, in my method, you and your descendants will take the land. He will be long dead before that ever happens. He will be dust. And yet, God's promise will come to fruition because that is God. 16. And I will make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Well, can a man count how many granules of dirt there are on planet Earth? No. But if they could, God said that would be an approximation of how many people I will bless through you. And that, of course, is a messianic reference. 17. He doesn't even have a kid yet. With God, all things are possible. 17. Arise and walk through the land in the length of it and the breadth of it, and I will give it to you. So every place where your foot touches, in other words, it is your land. It is your descendants' land. Even though there are no descendants, it's just him and Sarah and a bunch of servants. They don't have any kids yet. But I'm promising you this, and you will have it. In the meantime, you'll be a stranger. You'll be a pilgrim, but you'll be provided for. 18. Then Abram removed his tent. That's the opposite of pitched his tent. He's packing up to go. And came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar to the Lord. So he's about 17 miles south of Bethlehem. I'm sure that town will be relevant later on in your Bible. That's chapter 13. We can start chapter 14, but we probably won't finish it. I will tell you, I said this last week because someone asked me about teaching next quarter, and I just assumed I would, but I was told today that's not going to happen. So I'm not going to be teaching next quarter. So I have today and then in 2 weeks, and that's the end of the quarter. So we can start chapter 14, but we won't finish it. Well, we might finish it next week. It came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, and Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations. King of nations, the word is goyim, which is like the Hebrew slang for Gentiles, or Hebrew word for Gentile. In other words, it's just those that are not of this nationality, those that are not of this area. So near Mesopotamia, probably. Tidal was the ruler of them. So you've got these four kings, Amraphel, Arioch, Chedorlaomer, and Tidal. You have all these kings. I mean, what's the big deal, Moses? Well, let's find out. Verse 2. These all made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemaber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. So you have 4 kings of the east making war with 5 kings of the south. a battle is brewing. Well, actually, a battle is ongoing, but you have this major regional conflict that is happening, all situated around near the Persian Gulf to the Dead Sea kind of area. Verse 3. These all joined together in the valley of Siddim, which is called the Salt Sea. Now, it's called the Salt Sea. I got 5 minutes. It's called the Salt Sea now. The Dead Sea. It's known that because it's so the salinity is so high, you can float in it, and there's just no life there. Water comes in from the Jordan, but doesn't come out, and it just dies. But whether it was salty in the days of Abram, it's up for debate. Because it is entirely possible that when God nukes Sodom and Gomorrah from orbit, that the remnants and the remains of that is what causes it to become the Dead Sea as we know it. Because remember, when Lot looks at this region, he doesn't say, wow, it's beautiful, except for that giant Dead Sea there. He just says, it's all beautiful. So it's entirely possible that it was just all beautiful, and then suddenly something's going to happen, but it's like 6 chapters away. And then suddenly it's not going to be very beautiful in that particular spot anymore. So whether that is or isn't, I don't know. I'm not going to, pick a fight over it, but that's just a possibility. But it's not until after Sodom that it becomes a Dead Sea. Anyway, 12 years these people were serving Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. Serving him, they were vassal state to him. They were paying their taxes. They were, being used for favorable trade deals. He's walking over them to get to where he's going. Various things that you do when you're a vassal state. And, you can only put up with it so much, and then suddenly, you're crossing the Delaware and you're killing a bunch of Hessians. Verse 5. And the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham. I just love these words. And the Imims in the Shava Kiriathaim. Those all sound right. So, in other words, battle time. Verse 6. And the bless you. And the Horites in Mount Seir, and that's Mount Seir, that's the future Edom, just south of the Dead Sea, unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. So, coming together, let's have a big fight. And they returned, they came, after they fought him, to En Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country, the Amalekites, and also the Amorites, that dwell in Hazaz and Tamar. Usually I phonetically write them, and I did not do that. That's En Gedi. Look on the western side of the Dead Sea. Verse 8. We're building up to what's irrelevant. Well, it's all good, but we're building up. Verse 8. There went out the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, the same as Zoar. And they joined in the battle with them of the vale of Siddim. So they're joining the fight. We're going to have this big fight because we want to win our freedom from Chedorlaomer, and Chedorlaomer wants to stop us from having freedom. Verse 9. With Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and the title kings of the nations, and Amraphel, the king of Shinar, and Arioch, the king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. 4 over here, 5 over here. Probably an even fight because you never know how big these armies are, but 4 versus 5. Verse 10. And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountain. What a horrible way to go, to die in a slime pit. Tar pits. That's all I got for you. Verse 11. And they took the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. Victuals, storehouses of food. So just the spoils of victory from these eastern invaders. They plundered the cities, they reclaimed their tributes and the taxes, everything the rebelling people weren't paying anymore to their masters. Verse 12. So they got put down. The rebellion was squashed, as often happens in history. America is the great exception. Verse 12. And they took Lot, and Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. So to the victor go the spoils. So that means you're capturing land. That means you're capturing crops. That means you're capturing animals. That means you're capturing people to bring them into captivity. Lot apparently wasn't even fighting this battle. He's just minding his business, but he gets swept up in it. Now he's been captured. Verse 13. And somebody escaped, and they told Abram the Hebrew, there he is again, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, the brother of Abner. These were all confederate with Abram. So Abram had made some alliances, and he teamed up with some people for protection in the region and so forth. Somebody escapes the battle, they go run into Abram. 14. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, and he born in his own house 318, and he pursued them unto Dan. So Abram is just minding his own business. He has left Lot. Lot's gone his own way. Remember, he chose the best land, and he's gone his own way. He hasn't heard from him since. They don't have letters and postcards. He's just gone. We'll find out what happens to him, he thinks, sometime later. Well, sometime sooner, he finds out Lot has gotten himself in the middle of a war and up and gotten himself captured. So what does Abram do? Well, time to raise an army and time to go fight like Braveheart to get my nephew back. That's Abram. He hears his brother's taken captive. He raises up 318 and he pursues them as far as Dan. That's not the tribe of Dan. We don't have one of those yet. even in Moses' time when he's writing Genesis. It's the city of Gilead, north of the Sea of Galilee, so way up there, but near Caesarea Philippi today. So, I mean, he's chasing these suckers a long way. He's going all the way up to chase them because he wants his nephew back. I want my nephew back. Verse 15. We be brethren, call back. Verse 15. Oh! All right, 2 weeks. We'll pick it up there. What'll happen, I wonder? Will he rescue him? We'll find out. He will, and we'll meet Melchizedek as a result of it, which is the whole point.